Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. As you guys know, there's a whole lot of stuff happening throughout state legislatures in this country. Texas is no different. And today I am honored to be with the one and only Representative Jon Rosenthal from District 135 in the Houston area, but this covers entire Texas. Representative Jon, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well,
it's been too long since we've sat together.
Yeah, but you know what? There's so much that has happened since this is your second term that you've been reelected, which gives you a certain degree of permanence, and people know you. People know your name. I think you won something special in your first year at the Capitol. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. In my first term, I was awarded the Freshman of the Year. I was named Freshman of the Year by the Legislative Study Group, which is actually the second largest caucus in the Texas House, second only to the Republican House caucus. And so that's a great honor for me to be named. Legislative Study Group is a nonpartisan policy analysis group, and I was given that honor because my policy and my projection, my focus is on the people of Texas. So I don't let politics or special interests get in the way of serving the people.
Well, you know, that is one of the great things of actually having engineers in legislatures, because engineers believe in engineering things, making sure things work. I'm kind of partial to that. You're a mechanical engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. So, I mean, I'm really partial to those kinds of things. But anyhow, but look, there's a whole lot of stuff happening around the country. You saw what happened in Georgia, where they passed that bill that, I mean, even if you're in a long line for 11 hours, if somebody gives you a bottle of water, you are committing a crime. In the Texas Legislature, what's going on? Tell us a little bit about the bills that you want submitted. Tell us a little bit about the bills that you want to get the hell out of there. And tell us a little bit about what you need us as the community to do, meaning the entire Texas community to do, to make sure bad bills don't get through.
So how much time do we have?
You start telling me, and I will go from there.
Okay, so we have a number of really hot topics in the legislature. So I'll start with sort of a global view. And what's going on right now is there were already major initiatives to address recovery from the pandemic, major initiatives around voter suppression or voter security, depending on what your perspective on that is. You know, we've got George Floyd Act and major amendment to the Sandra Bland Act. So a lot of civil rights, criminal justice reform issues. And then to pile on top of all of this, we just had a major freeze at the beginning of our session. And there's a huge push. The governor made it an emergency item to address some of the causing factors of this freeze. Hopefully we will do that substantively, but those are the those are the big ticket items that I see. And there's a number of other things too. I hope I'm not leaving off something terribly important, but I came in, you know, with my specific agenda too. I wanted in a lean budget year. So one of the challenges we're facing is that we're not going to have as much money to spend this time as we did last time, because the revenues are reduced as a result of the COVID pandemic, less oil and gas sales. So we get less oil and gas severance taxes, less in-person sales. So there's less sales tax. I guess property tax probably stays the same, but you know, the number of people that default on their homes and stuff reduces that probably some. So we got a shortfall in revenue, and that makes life a little tougher, because we just fought in my first session, in the 86th legislative session, which was the last one. We fought so hard to increase spending in public education, and we had a massive increase in spending for public education, like $12 billion. And so I came in with a strong focus to try to maintain that spending, and even if possible, try to find a way to increase spending in our public schools. And it may be possible. because of federal money coming in, that is going to alleviate some of these budget concerns, but not probably not all of
And
them.
that is from the $1.9 trillion America Rescue Plan.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So I personally, we could get into all sorts of stuff. I mean, we could probably talk all day just about that, just about trying to make sure that federal money coming into the state that's earmarked to benefit public schools actually goes to the public schools.
Before you go into the specific of those particular bills that you're talking about,
yeah.
I want to ask something that has been my pet peeve for over a decade now, and that is the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. I mean, it was denied Texans, even though for the first 3 years it cost 0 and thereafter 10%. And it also helps the economy. Have you guys decided what you're going to do about that yet? Or are Democrats going to go in there and make a stink about some of the reasons why it is actually hurting us, not only health-wise, but economically?
Yes. And there are a number of bills that Democrats have brought to push, the executive to accept the expansion. We're also going to have an extended series of conversations on budget night to accept the Medicaid expansion, just like we did in the last session. Democrats have pushed to accept this expansion since it was available. And now we're one of something like only 12 states to not have accepted it.
Exactly. Even most red states now have it, yes.
Because they figured out they're leaving money on the table, and it's our money.
Yes, it's
We've
amazing.
It's $10 billion, is it $10 billion a biennium, I think. So
yes,
it's $5 billion a year. And so over the course of the last 10 years, we've left $50 billion on the table. And
unrecoverable.
That's right. And
John, I want to ask you,
we're hoping that puts pressure.
Sorry to interrupt you, Representative.
No, it's fine.
But I want to ask you this because my contention is for a group that claims to be fiscally responsible, why haven't we more effectively made the case that we've left $50 billion that could have gone to educate our kids, $50 billion that could have otherwise gone to do so many other things on the table? How can you elect people that do that?
It's a good question. I mean, that should be a fundamental talking point for us. And I think it has been. It was part of my platform to get elected, and also my platform. Yes, and my platform to get reelected. I mean, this was a much tougher election. Freshmen are seen as a freshman flipping a seat from one party to the other is seen as most vulnerable after that first term.
Right.
And so spending in my race was in the millions of dollars. I mean, it was a very tight race. So I'm grateful to the people of the district for returning me to the House. But that was my message, and I think that's part of how Democrats not just succeed. I mean, it's good to succeed, and certainly there's an amount of political ambition around this. But the point has got to be what's good for the people, what's good for the state, and we're beyond the tipping point. Texas is simply the worst in the country when it comes to healthcare for our citizens. We are number 50 out of 50 on a number of measurements that are vital, including, maternal mortality, number of uninsured, percentage of uninsured, number of uninsured children, percentage of uninsured children in this state, higher than any other state in the union. And folks who are conservatives that maybe hold a different view, I hope that they will come around to understand that the fact that folks are uninsured raises the cost to insure all of us. It raises the cost for healthcare for everybody across the table. So accepting the money, the Medicaid expansion, will help alleviate some of those costs, especially the indigent care costs. You show up in an emergency room, you don't have insurance, they take care of you anyway, and the hospital pads all their other charges on everybody else to cover what they're going to have to cover in that. So when you bring that down, it lowers the cost for all of us. And when you lower the cost, you lower the insurance rate. So
what's the possibility of it being cleared this time around in this session? Because if we don't get it cleared in 2021, we don't get a shot at it until 2023.
That's correct. So, well, actually, that's technically it's not correct. The governor could do it anytime he wanted to
Well,
with the
that's true.
stroke of a
Yeah.
pen.
Right.
But we only have a chance once every 2 years to push the governor to do that
Right.
in an official way like this. And there are a number of conservatives who are on board with it. So last time they voted in unity against our amendments to expand it, to accept the expansion, to accept it in narrowly defined categories like for upon to allow women to stay on it after childbirth for a year, things like that. But now there's a number of conservatives who are joining us in the fiscal argument. So while it's just plain the right thing to do, there's a fiscal argument to be made that you're making very effectively. And
well, it would seem like rural senators and rural representatives would really want it, given to what's happening in those rural hospitals right now.
Well, what's happening in rural hospitals is they're closing at an alarming rate. And
Right.
so folks who live in rural Texas, their distance to care is increasing in a lot of areas, because when your rural hospital closes, instead of a 20-minute drive you had now, maybe it's a 40-minute drive or a 50-minute drive just to get to a hospital. So I'm very hopeful that all of that, how it's been going, puts pressure on conservatives to join with us
Well,
and make it happen.
I like the way you operate in the House. I find that you follow some of the principles that many of us have been talking about, and that is working with everybody, not finding a way to absolutely work with everybody. And I find that in a state representative or in any politician, it proves that you care more about the people than some sort of ideology that you represent.
I do, and thank you so much for recognizing that. I think my colleagues in the House also see that. So I'd like to say that in the Texas government, we are less adversarial across the aisle than what we see in Washington. So we do consider ourselves colleagues, but just the same, there are plenty of people who are more left of center that don't want to work with the people who are more right of center. And to me, the truth of the matter is there are some wedge issues, out at the edges. There are some wedge issues that divide us that probably we'll never agree on. But the vast majority of stuff that goes through the House gets large bipartisan support. And something like 86% of the bills in the last session had more than 100 votes out of 150 in the House. There's only 80 something Republicans, so you've got good support with more than 100 votes. That's enough to get a constitutional amendment, stuff like that. And so I like to think we have more in common than what separates us.
Well, again, if we elect more people like you, Jon, we'll be in great shape. Now, tell me a little bit about. Give me a walk down on the bills that you want to see in effect, and give me a walk down of the bills that you want to see canned.
I'm going to start with the voter suppression laws. So we've got House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 7, I believe they are, and they are moving through committees right now. These, we need everyone to show up in support of these. So I believe that you can register remotely to say you are for or against a bill. We call that dropping a card. So you can register remotely by going to house.texas.gov. And I think on the committees tab, you can find, for us, it'll be the elections committee, of course, and you can drop a card.
So we don't want SB 7, right?
SB 7 has already passed out of committee and it's going to go to the Senate House floor. We don't want SB 7 and we don't want HB 6. They're basically the same bill.
Right.
The SB is the Senate bill and the HB is the
House bill. Yeah.
They have companions so they can work together. And they do that to try to get across the finish line earlier in the session. And Republicans have the votes to advance both of these. It's pretty egregious. If you follow my Twitter and Facebook feeds, I comment about this quite a bit, but we want folks to register against these bills. So do what we call drop a card, register against the bill. Just make sure your voice is heard in some way. If you can come to Austin to testify against, That is also encouraged. The more voices they hear, the better. And when we pack a committee hearing, and they will have limited registration on the day of, probably. You just go to the Capitol, they got kiosks, you sign up to testify. When we sit in these committees and a bill comes up and we see, oh my goodness, there's 300 people here to testify on, for, or against, it really has an effect on legislators. I think the process is designed for you, the public, for people in the public to interface, to engage with their elected representatives.
Now, what's the major hurdle or the major bad thing in that HB 6 SB 7?
There's a bunch, and I don't know them all, but it limits.
Just give me the
voting
two
hours.
major ones.
It makes it harder for handicapped people to vote. You have to prove that you require an accommodation, so you need a doctor's note. It will limit early voting. It will require that every voting location has the same number of machines. So whether you're in a church in rural Texas or you're at NRG Stadium to serve downtown Houston, you have to have exactly the same number of machines.
Makes no sense, right?
It makes no sense.
It hurts urban areas.
It hurts urban areas the worst. And there's other stuff. I mean,
we don't have the water bill in there though, nor do we have the you can't feed anybody in the line bill in there, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're not quite as egregious as Georgia, but it's
but I heard that they were actually going against something that I practice here, which is going against the voter registrars.
Yeah, so I think they want to limit or remove the deputy voter registrars.
Right.
They want to severely curtail a government entity's ability to inform the public how to request a mail-in ballot. So our elections administrator or county clerk couldn't even put out informational materials about that. I mean, it's egregious.
Yeah, we need to give that more coverage. I'm glad that you put that all on your Twitter feed all of the time. So we'll keep abreast of that other bill that we don't want.
Oh, that's the big one for me. There are other ones moving through, but my ability to focus on how many of these, there's
so many.
There's so many. There's an anti-transgender bill that won't allow transgender athletes.
Oh, we have one also. I didn't quite know that one. I didn't see that in your list. Okay.
Yeah, it's not on. I mean, it's something I actively fight against. I mean, I'm an ally, of course, the LGBTQIA community, and I'm bringing legislation that's for anti-discrimination legislation. I have a gender marker bill for trans folks to be able to change the gender marker on their driver's license, stuff like that. But that's also egregious, and I view it as a distraction on some of these other fronts. They're going to want to water down the George Floyd Act, which is being heard right now. Sanfronia Thompson brought House Bill 88, and that's the George Floyd Act. There's also a continuation of Sandra Bland Act, and I think it's Garnet Coleman's bill, but I'm not sure. I'm signed on to a bunch of these, and there's a bunch of criminal justice reform stuff that I support. And then public education, I've got some personal pet things I want to talk about really quick.
Give it to me.
One is House Bill 699. We're calling it Riley's Rule. We had a young man who had been fighting a chronic illness coming to the office. He was like 15 when he booked an appointment to see me in my district office, and he had been held back a year in school because having too many absences. In our school district, we have a 90-20 rule and a 90-10 rule. If you don't attend 90% of the class meetings, you cannot pass the class, even if you do all the work. And so between the doctor appointments, specialty appointments, therapy, things like that, he had missed more than 10% of the school meetings and was held back a year in school, even though he had completed the academic requirements. So this bill makes a state law that absences associated with chronic or terminal illness cannot be used to
Excellent.
And that passed unanimously through the House Education Committee. The young man, Riley, came and testified. I had members of the committee coming up to me afterwards and saying, you need to bring that young man to all your bill layouts when you go explain a bill.
You will win it every time.
He will get all your stuff passed. He was so powerful. It was great. And then I also have one that's House Bill 626, and this expands an adult career education program. So this is the most successful adult career education program in the country. It's called Texas Innovative ACE, ACE for Adult Career Education Program. And it is geared toward helping people train up for careers that are in demand, better paying jobs. And so my legislation doubles the grant for the program. So I've got a budget request to double their money and then expand the program so that they can also serve nonprofits that help veterans with career education. So double the size of the program and allow it to serve veterans. And it's near and dear to me because it helps an adult career education program, helps people, where they are to qualify for better jobs. And it's an original idea. It wasn't brought up to me by someone else.
But you know what is also great about that, Representative? The great thing about that is that this is where we are in the American economy, where that is a necessity in this new economy. Because look at what has happened with the freeze or with the pandemic. There are a lot of jobs that are no longer going to be there because now people are going to be working from home. They're going to realize new efficiencies, and people are going to have to retrain themselves for other things.
Absolutely right. And then this also feeds into we have an affordable housing crisis. If you're making minimum wage, you just cannot afford a place to stay. I mean, I can talk all day about those numbers. I've studied that a lot. So we're trying to redefine what affordable housing is to move that needle for the developments that get the government subsidy. They get a break on their taxes if they agree to use a portion of their development for affordable housing. And I want that. We've got initiatives in that area. Of course, if we would just raise the minimum wage, that moves the needle on affordable housing right there. Part of the problem is we got people working for sub-poverty wages.
What are the pet peeve?
Pet peeve for me?
No, I mean, is there another bill that you have or?
Okay, so I have a slate of 7 bills. So you mentioned me being a mechanical engineer. I am the only mechanical engineer in the entire Texas State Legislature. I'm the only oil and gas technical professional. I've worked in that industry for more than 25 years. And while I've done upstream exploration development, subsea production systems is what I've worked on. I'm a systems guy. I'm a math person, like literally build mathematical models.
Well, hell, your dad was a math PhD at the University of Austin.
That's right. My daddy was an endowed position
at the university, at our university. Both of us went to
the University of Texas at Austin.
Yes.
So I fortunately or unfortunately, whether it's a blessing or a curse, I grew up in a house with a math professor. But what I'm getting at here is I'm actually an expert in an engineering field called flow assurance. And this is the science of moving oil and gas product through pipes when they get hot or cold. I know what happened during this freeze, and a portion of that has to do with the availability of product that we use for thermal generation. So I brought 7 bills. We're calling it Step Up. I don't remember the bill numbers, but it's the Securing Texas Energy Power Utility Commission or something like that.
In other words, your bills are going to make sure that what happened in the big freeze does not happen again.
So I'm taking a very pragmatic approach to this, and I'm not listening to partisans, and I'm not listening to industry finger pointers, because what they did was they pointed fingers at each other.
Right.
Electrical generation folks said, if we had had the natural gas, we would never shut down. And the natural gas people said, if you hadn't turned off electricity, we could have run our compressors and fed you the gas, and we need compressors to run gas through pipes. And I'm saying just like when you have kids who are fighting with each other, I don't care which one of you started it. The problem is you depend on each other. And if either one goes down, our whole grid goes down. And I do not want to freeze my butt off in my house again. So I've brought these bills. There's a number of high priority bills that are being run by leadership folks that are high up in seniority in the House. And so by bringing my legislation, it doesn't mean that my particular bills will pass, but I'll be working with the authors of some of these other bills to kind of get stuff in there to make sure it's not just window dressing, to make sure it's not just lip service, or to be able to say we did something without actually causing the change. If we don't change something, that will happen again. And that's just all there is to it. Right? We got to change something.
Let me tell you something. Like I said, engineers get things done. And you've been getting a hell of a lot done. And we got to close here. But before we close, I always ask, what would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
So the question I used to hate that now I love to answer is, why did you get into politics? Why leave engineering? Why leave a good paying job to basically volunteer as a legislator? You know, we make $7,200 per year in this job. And the reason to do that is it's such an honor, it's such a privilege to be able to do things to help people in their daily lives. And your state government has the opportunity to make it worse or make it better. And I have gone to bring the voice of reason and work for the people of Texas as long as I can afford to. You know, I lived in Illinois for a while, and farmers used to say, if I ever win the lottery, I'm going to buy a farm and work it till the money runs out. Well,
You're going to work.
I'm going to do this until either I go broke or find a way to pay the bills.
I love you, brother. Listen, Texas House Representative Jon Rosenthal of District 135, friend of mine, a hell of a politician, but you know, first, someone who cares about his district, somebody who cares about his state, somebody who cares about his country. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right, Jon.
Thank you so much, my brother. I appreciate you.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.